Multiple NFL insiders, including divided ESPN reports, indicate what Sam Darnold's price tag could be expected to clock in at, as well as the options the Vikings can consider come contract time. And Sam Darnold himself speaks on his uncertain future with the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to be breaking down all that in this episode of Vikings Digest, but first make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you don't miss any updates surrounding the Vikings as we head through an already crazy offseason that's about to get even crazier. And with that, let's hop into the first topic of the day, which is Darnold heading for transition tag. So in a quote from Jeremy Fowler, who published an article on ESPN talking about all about Sam Darnold, really his contract, teams he could go to, and the main quote is going to be what we're looking at here, saying the Vikings have not yet made a firm determination on Sam Darnold's future with the team. His strong play this season has caused them to pause and take a hard look at their options. Bringing him back feels like a stronger possibility than it was 5 or 6 months ago, but the Vikings will have a cap on spending here. Some agents have argued that Darnold shouldn't take a penny less than Daniel Jones's 4-year, $160 million deal with the Giants from 2 years ago. The teams have suggested Darnold getting something more in line with Baker Mayfield's contract, 3 years, $100 million. In the end, perhaps the transition tag that would be $35.3 million makes the most sense. So a lot of people talk about the franchise tag as being one of the things that if you want to avoid a lengthy contract but still want to pay a guy so you ensure that he stays, they usually give them the franchise tag. But what is the transition tag? It's similar to the franchise tag as it's a 1-year fully guaranteed contract for a pending free agent. Like players who are franchise tag, players who are on a transition tag can negotiate with other teams. If another team makes an offer, the Vikings would have the right to match it. If the Vikings decline to match the offer, off Darnold goes to a new team that doesn't owe any Minnesota compensation. The transition tag gives Darnold more flexibility than the franchise tag because franchise tag players are highly unlikely to receive offers from other teams because an outside team that signs a franchise tag player has to give the original team 2 future first-round picks. The transition tag is also cheaper than the franchise tag, with 2025 estimates coming in at $41.3 million to franchise tag quarterbacks compared to $35.2 million to transition tag quarterbacks. Now, if you guys have been watching, you guys would know that I've been on the fence of saying that we should probably move on from Sam Darnold and not even franchise tag him. But the transition tag does offer a few cool options here. The transition tag has only been used 6 times in the NFL in the past decade. 3 of those 6 players wound up getting offers from other teams, and only one of those situations resulted in the team that used the transition tag not matching the offer to keep the player. Darnold passed for more than 4,300 yards with 35 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, but folded under relentless pressure against the Lions to end the regular season and again versus the Rams in the first round playoff loss. And I think those last 2 games are definitely why the contract has kind of gone down in expectations from $160 million down to $100 million. There's some other expectations or predictions that we're going to get into in a second here, but looking at the main thing with the transition tag here, I don't entirely hate the option of putting Darnold on a transition tag. I don't like the franchise tag or even just signing him to a contract because I think $160 million for him, absolutely not. We don't want Kirk Cousins 2.0. Franchise tag, that's $41 million. That's an extra couple million that you can't go out and lock down these secondary free agents that we have on defense, or go out and get a running back in free agency, or go out and get offensive linemen to bolster it down, because this is something the Minnesota Vikings have been in denial about before. It's not entirely the quarterback. Yes, the quarterback does make a big factor in it, but we saw with Kirk Cousins, it didn't matter how good Kirk Cousins played. If that offensive line is Swiss cheese, we're going to be terrible on offense. We saw that happen this season where the offensive line, there was a lot of gaps that were exploited insanely in the latter half of the season, especially in those last 2 games when all hell broke loose and we were just up shit's creek without a paddle, in all honesty, and we could not stop any pass rush that came our way, and even the run game, that couldn't even get going as much as it did early on in the season. Teams really figured us out. Yeah, we had a lot of injuries happen. I know Brian O'Neill going down in that playoff game, Christian Darrisaw going down in the earlier Rams game in the season. Those were huge blows, but you still have to make sure, and this proved exactly that. You need to make sure that you have backups that can't just be that, oh, next man up, feed him to the Sharks and see if he sinks or swims. No. You need to make sure you go out and get guys that are dogs, that are healthy dogs, that will stay healthy. And if they can't stay healthy, make sure that your backups can rise to the occasion and make sure they get the job done. We didn't have that this year, and we haven't had that for a long time in Minnesota. We've seen quarterback after quarterback come through these doors saying, hey, I can get us a Lombardi. But in the end, it hasn't entirely been the quarterback. Do I think Kirk Cousins was the guy to get us a Super Bowl? Absolutely not. I'm happy we did move on from him, as much as he was great to have on the team, great for the locker room. Guys loved him. The city loved him. There was a lot to like about Kirk Cousins, but winning football games was not one of them. Sam Darnold, we are at risk of that, where it showed in the big games this season when games meant the most. Sam Darnold did not rise to the occasion. His offensive line let him down, but he also let the team down. So it's a two-way street in that, where, yeah, if the Minnesota Vikings do fix the O-line after paying Darnold all that money, somehow they're going to fix this line. Cool, that's great. Then it's all on Darnold and he has no excuses. And if he doesn't perform, then you're locked into that long-term deal and you're screwed. Whereas if you go with the transition tag, at least you're paying a lot for that 1 year, but at least you can move on from him, not have to worry about the money. Teams don't owe you anything, which does kind of suck. However, you don't have to lock yourself down to a long contract that you're going to be digging yourself out of that is impossible to trade away from. It's not until I was playing with talking about all these contracts, it's not until I was playing a recent playthrough of Madden 21 or 22 where Kirk Cousins got that big contract extension and I tried to trade him. It took a lot for me to try to move on from him. The Minnesota Vikings are at risk of doing that again with Sam Darnold if they choose to sign him long term. So yes, if of all the options looking at here, if there's any scenario where Darnold stays in Minnesota, I think the transition tag would be the best fit for it. But I still am of the belief that you let him walk or just have him as a backup to JJ McCarthy. I know McCarthy might not be ready to go right away, but then you also have Daniel Jones, which, like we've said before, I'm okay with him starting the first 4 to 6 games of the season because Kevin O'Connell, I think, can bring something good out of Daniel Jones, especially at the beginning of the season before teams can figure him out and just the wheels fall off and Danny Dimes turns back into the pumpkin that he was in New York. But if you do have that and then JJ comes in and sweeps the league, that's amazing. But with Darnold, I don't think that he has the potential to get us to that Lombardi. I know throughout the season we had a great season, but when you look at the games that mattered most, like I said, Darnold just did not show up in the ways that he needed to. His team around him didn't show up in that way, but he is still the main part that it revolves around. But what do you guys think about the transition tag? Do you like that idea of Darnold taking the transition tag? Would you rather them franchise tag him? Would you rather them sign him long term or just move on from him entirely? Let us know what you guys think down in the comments. That's going to take us into our second topic of the day, which is divided ESPN reports. So the first one we're going to get into is from Dan Graziano saying that his prediction for the Sam Darnold contract is 3 years, $120 million, $75 guaranteed. Vikings have talked about bringing Darnold back, even with JJ McCarthy waiting in the wings to take over as a long-term starter at some point. They could franchise tag him roughly $40 million with the intent of keeping him and possibly trading him, but odds are the market is going to offer Darnold more than Minnesota can afford. The Raiders, Giants, Jets, Steelers, Browns, Titans, and Saints are among the teams that will or could find themselves looking for a new quarterback this offseason. And he went on further to say that the Vikings can pay receiver Justin Jefferson $35 million per year, in part because it's anticipating operating on McCarthy's rookie deal. In the end, they probably end up letting Darnold hit the market, where he should be able to command a deal in the line with like the Baker Mayfield deal, like Jeremy Fowler was reporting, got from the Bucs a year ago, though it would be adjusted upward and based on inflation and market demand. And Graziano's take here, I really like this take because I'm in this exact same boat of belief saying, hey, Minnesota has a lot of priorities they have to do this offseason, and I don't know if paying Darnold is going to be high on that list of priorities, considering what else they have to do, considering that, yeah, you did draft JJ McCarthy to be the future of this team. Why the hell would you invest in Sam Darnold in a more than 3-year deal, or even a 3-year deal at that, when you have a rookie quarterback who's just eager to get back out on the field after his rookie season was derailed by a meniscus injury? And again, that Justin Jefferson thing, that is the main point that I like looking at here, where they signed Jefferson to a huge deal, knowing they were going to go out and get a rookie quarterback and building around that and making sure Jefferson was able to be there for that rookie quarterback to develop. If you go and sign Darnold, you're not going to get that for a few more years. And by that time, JJ's contract will be up, or he'll be out of Minnesota because we can't make the playoffs or win a playoff game with Sam Darnold, or the weapons that we can't go get because we signed Sam Darnold. So there's a lot of things here where I'm in the very big belief of saying, hey, let Darnold walk, and I don't think Minnesota has the thing to get it. But other teams, there's a lot of teams out there that are going to overpay for a quarterback, mainly NFC teams. You look at the list there where you see in there where he has the other teams listed. You have the Raiders, Giants, Jets, Steelers, Browns, and Titans and Saints. There you got the Giants and Saints right there. Boom. They love overpaying for quarterbacks. Steelers will be in the market. That's another one. Browns, stay the hell away from Cleveland as far as any quarterback's concerned. The Raiders, that they have a changing culture there. Pete Carroll. The Jets would be a touch of irony, but there are a lot of teams that are ready to move on at quarterback. But then you have on the other side too, where Ben Solak of ESPN was saying, if Darnold's market indeed comes near $40 million per year, the Vikings will likely get priced out as they address other positions. But if Darnold wants to stay in the Kevin O'Connell offense in Minnesota, can get him at a lower figure, don't be surprised to see it happen. Now this is talking about the potential of Darnold possibly taking a pay cut to stay in Minnesota. And if the transition tag will be around that or franchise tag, he might be willing to stay just because of if that's what he would get paid on an annual basis with other teams. Yeah, it wouldn't be long term, but it would still allow him to talk with other teams at least and field his options, with Minnesota getting some compensation or no compensation, unfortunately, with the franchise tag. So ESPN, they're kind of divided on what they think is going to happen with Darnold. There's a few people saying that Darnold will take a pay cut. There's some saying that he will just walk because the Vikings can't afford it. And then you have Jeremy Fowler saying that the transition tag might be what Minnesota needs to keep Darnold there. But that's going to take us into our third topic of the day, which is, what's Sam got to say about all this? He's the one that's being involved in all these talks. What's his side of things? Well, at the Pro Bowl games this weekend, he was asked about it. He said, I've put a little bit of thought into it. I'm not going to share anything about kind of what I've been thinking or obviously the conversations I've had behind closed doors. There's obviously a lot that's going to happen still, even after the Super Bowl. So I'm just going to continue to talk to my agent and figure out things from there. This isn't him saying that he's for sure coming back. It isn't saying that he's for sure leaving. He didn't say anything about the Minnesota Vikings or that he wants to stay in Minnesota. I know obviously he would love to stay. He loves these fans. We saw that thank you that he had on Instagram. But I think here with Sam saying, hey, the door is kind of open. I know it's not overtly saying it, but if you read between the lines there, it kind of has the door open on both sides, where the potential of him staying is still there and the potential of him leaving is still there, but neither side is guaranteed. And I do like that approach from Darnold, as any athlete would. But it is nice that we have a quarterback that isn't involved in any drama. Not that we usually do. Kirk Cousins wasn't really drama. It just was a lot of money to keep him there. And thankfully, we didn't pay him after so many years of just padding stats, getting just above 500 and not winning a playoff game. That's what I'm very scared of is going to happen here, because Darnold had a great statistical year, but look at the wins, and when they mattered, wasn't there. Like I said earlier, and like I've said repeatedly, that is the main thing as to why I think Minnesota Vikings just hand the keys off to JJ McCarthy, and that's where we go from there. Then you have Tom Pelissero as well, saying that the logical outcome of this would be Minnesota to keep Sam Darnold because JJ McCarthy missed the entire rookie season, but they're not trading him, and there's no precedent for a guy missing an entire year of reps as a rookie coming back and playing again like it never happened. All I know is Sam played well, the best football of his career under Kevin O'Connell. The last two games notwithstanding, it makes sense for Sam Darnold, all things equal, to come back. It makes sense for the Vikings to bring him back. They won 14 games with him. They also have the franchise tag at their disposal if they choose to use it. Now, Tom Pelissero, he's on the optimistic side of things here, saying that Minnesota would be best to keep Darnold in the situation because JJ McCarthy, there's no guarantee that he's going to be even what he was in the preseason that we saw in that brief little flash, because of the nature of his injury and because he's basically going to be a rookie despite sitting for a year. He still wasn't getting reps. He was still injured on the sideline, so it wasn't like he was ready to be a backup to go in at some point. He was still there learning, absorbing the offense, which is great. He's learning, but now he has to put that into practice. And is he going to be able to put that into game day situations? That remains to be seen. We're going to see what comes in the preseason if he's able to go, but that should be an interesting and anxious wait for Vikings fans. But what do you guys think of all this? I know it was a lot to cover. It was a lot of similar reports, but there was a lot of different takes here where it's all around Sam Darnold and many different possibilities. But what do you guys think is the best possibility? Let us know what you guys think down in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of the new updates. But with that, I've been your host, Griffen. Take care.